Wow, 100 episodes. Can you believe you made it this far? Today isn't just another episode, it's a celebration of community creativity and incredible journey that we shared together. I'm thrilled to mark this milestone with someone who embodies everything this podcast stands for: innovation, passion, and transformative storytelling to help creatives. Jooelyn Calvillo isn't just a music marketing expert, she's a game changer who's redefined how independent artists can connect with their audience in an increasingly digital world. And today, she's here to pull back the curtain on strategies that can turn musical dream into reality. We're going to explore the intersection of artistry and entrepreneurship, unpack the secrets of building a magnetic personal brand, and share insights that will inspire musicians on every stage of their career. This isn't just an interview, it's a testament of the power of persistence, creativity, and believing in yourself. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Encourage and Inspire podcast. And this is a special episode for a couple of reasons. This is recording episode number 100, so we finally made it to 100. So that's a milestone within itself. And I have another great special guest with me, somebody who I connected with on good old IG.
Mhm.
Instagram. She's a music marketer, music executive, all those type of good things. Jocelyn, how do I say your last name properly?
Jocelyn Calvillo.
Calvillo. Okay, I just want to make sure I say it right. Okay, awesome. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Grateful that you had me on. And first of all, congrats on episode 100. Like that's a nice accomplishment. And then also it has a great ring to it. So I'm grateful to be on episode 100.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. I came across your stuff on IG, just scrolling on IG, and again, you're out here fighting the good fight, as we all are, trying to help independent artists. Because it's not easy to do that. And I just loved your content, and I said, man, I would love to have a great conversation with you in terms of music marketing and how all that affects artists in today's space. And yeah, so it's gonna be a great conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it and been sharing game on TikTok and Instagram for a while now. So yeah, it's cool that you found my content and I'm excited to share some sauce with your platform.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, I always like to start like, when did you kind of figure out like music is something that you kind of wanted to, work in and be involved in, and but even before that, like your first introduction to music, like,
Yeah.
what was that like?
Yeah, so I really have no musical backgrounds. It all just started off with a passion for music. And I actually went to college. I played basketball, studying sports management. So I always thought I was gonna, end up in sports. But where it took a turn was when I turned 18 and college, started going to concerts, festivals, and I was just like, who's behind all this? There's people that are actually running the show. There's people that make a living off of this. So I got just really curious and then started doing research, on the music industry, different positions. I came across the A&R role and I was like, wow, this is like the dream job. So then I
Uh,
figured out, how I would land an A&R internship position. And that's kind of how I got my foot in maybe
okay.
about 8 years ago. It's been so long, but yeah, it was just purely a passion. And then I was hungry and reached out to as many people as I needed to get in touch with for an opportunity to finally land. And that was kind of my intro into music.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, yeah. Look, I always like to say, music kind of found me. I've been doing this a long time. I've been working with artists since around 2006-ish, around that
Wow.
time. And so I've been doing this a long time, but I never grew up wanting to be in the music industry. Of course, like, I love sports. I actually went to high school in a management program for hospitality, travel, and tourism. So I thought I was going to take that route. It didn't end up going that way, and I ended up going to community college. And then what happened was my best friend at the time had a roommate, and he was in the dance crew, and so he used to invite me to just go to the practices. Me having a disability, I was born with cerebral palsy, so Ian and I used to hang out, and he would invite me to the rehearsals. And so down here in Orlando, we have this thing called Classic Weekend, right? So that's right before Thanksgiving, where Bethune-Cookman University and Florida A&M University play the football game. So the football game's played on Saturday afternoon, but the Friday night before they have the high school battle of the bands, right? So this is like all the black high schools in Orlando come in and like they perform or whatever. So we had gotten hired, our dance crew got hired to perform at the intermission during that event. And so they curated the freestyle session to have me come out at the end and dance. And so that's kind of how I got the bug of entertainment. But I knew I didn't want to be an artist. I said, I want to learn the business.
Yeah,
And so I was fortunate enough to be mentored by my big brother LaShawn. We call him TS for Tall Sean. He's actually the owner of the podcast network that this podcast is housed in. And he took me under his wing. I was 19. He was 25 or 24, 25, and just kind of taught me how the industry works. And but I've been pretty much doing it on my own now for pretty much since 2008, 2009. I ended up going back to a school called Full Sail University, where I got my degree in entertainment business, and pretty much the rest is history. I won't go too much
yeah.
into the weeds of it,
Yep,
but I'm passionate about helping creatives and really about showing them that how to build a core audience and really through education and knowledge and helping them become global.
for sure. I mean, thank you for doing what you're doing and then also just, talking about your disability and
Yeah,
encouraging and inspiring others. Like, that's amazing. We need more of you, and as far as like, how I came across music in my career, I never thought it was something I would do as well. Like I never even thought about being in the music business until I was an adult and it kind of just happened, but I'm so grateful for it. And for me, like it really is just a passion. I never had any interest in really being a music artist, but
yeah,
the music business has always been so interesting to me. And
yeah,
then just like, I'm so grateful as well. I had some incredible mentors who you might actually be familiar with. Brandman Sean,
yeah,
Sean
yeah,
Taylor, Corey
yeah,
Barkley.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They run.
I've talked to Sean a few times. So
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah, I've talked to him a few times. I've been following him and these guys what they do for a long time. So definitely, definitely, definitely got to get those guys on too at some point.
For
Um,
sure. Yeah, they run the No Labels Necessary podcast, and they
yeah.
also have an agency called Contraband Agency where I worked at for a few years. So yeah, I'm really grateful for them, but they taught me a lot of what I know now.
That's awesome. They're doing great things, man. They're doing great things, and it's interesting because most people who end up in the music industry don't usually go to school for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was fortunate enough to go to school for it, but even before that, I had years of experience even prior to going to school. So I think everybody's journey is different, man. And I think
Yeah.
and especially nowadays because like most artists will never sign a major record deal. It just won't.
Yeah.
It just won't happen. So I think people like you and I are much more valuable in today's space of the decentralized democrat. What do you call it? The democratization of the industry,
Close,
right?
close enough.
Oh yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So
Yeah, of course.
where you don't have to be so if you really think about it, right, there's five industry cities, right? LA, Miami, New York, Atlanta, Nashville, in no
Yep.
particular order, right? And that's what you would consider industry, right? But these days, you know, there was a time 10, 12 years ago, you had to go through Atlanta. If you
Yep.
were doing urban music, you had to go through Atlanta. You had to. It was no other choice but to go through Atlanta. Now, I would say that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. So it's very much different. It's a great space. This to me, this is the best time. This is the best time to be in the music industry because you can literally control your own destiny. I mean, We don't know for sure what's going to happen. Nobody can ethically tell you for sure exactly what's going to happen, but you have a lot more freedoms and pathways to success than you did, say, 15, 20 years ago. Even like I said, even 10 years ago. I mean, there's going to be an era of kids that don't even remember the mixtape era, where they used to be
Yep.
part of your marketing. We're going to drop 4 or 5 mixtapes before we drop our actual project, and you wouldn't do that now. You know what I'm saying? But
Exactly.
that's what you did in 2012, 2013, 24. Probably before that. I would say between 2009 and 2014 is kind of the era of like the mixtape era. I mean, that's how Drake got on.
Yep. Exactly. And I mean, to a lot of newer artists too, I always hear the argument like there's so many artists releasing nowadays. There's more competition than ever. Like, how am I supposed to stand out in all the noise? And
Uh-huh.
I like to play devil's advocate, right? And I always say there's never been a time like today where you can just upload a song on Spotify, Apple Music yourself, press a button on TikTok and go viral and have your music be exposed to millions of people.
Hmm.
So when you start to look at things that way, I think you can really have the appreciation that you do and agree that today is the best day or best time to be in music. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just about getting in that mindset and realizing like how powerful these social media platforms are. And if you're willing to work your ass off, like you can break through the noise and be discovered through your own will. You know, you don't really need a label, a manager, any agents. You can do
Yeah.
it all yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and part of I'm sure this ties into a lot of the work you do. A lot of it is mindset, right? Because I don't really believe in virality because I just think that most people who are if you're chasing that, if you happen to get it and then you're not set up with the infrastructure to be able to harness that properly, it actually hurts you.
Yep.
It doesn't help you. You know what I'm saying? So that's why for me everything is about let's build a core. Let's build literally one person at a time, literally. One person at a
Exactly.
time, and then you gather the data, right? You gather the data and then you let the data tell you how to move, if that makes sense. If
Absolutely.
that makes sense, right? And so many artists, like I have an artist that I work with right now, she's an international like Afro beats, Afro fusion, Latin. And I think with her, she is last time she does really well overseas, really really well overseas. And I told her, and a lot of times she's like, "Well, I need a booking agent." I said, "Well, we can get." I first of all, a booking agent is one of the toughest things to get. Like
Mhm.
it's really really hard to get a booking agent because for them they only have a vested interest in you if you're going to be able to generate them income because they're only there to make money. They're not there and they're not vested in any other part of your career other than you put butts into the seats.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
So with her, it was like, okay, well, you need a CRM, you need data, you need every show you do, you got to be able to know who these people are. You got to be able to know how to contact them and where they bring value into what you're doing. So I think that's where a lot of artists struggle because like they have everything else, but they just need the data a lot of too, and we'll jump into this too. But a lot they try to run ads too early. They try to do a lot of things way too early in the game versus building the foundation.
Yeah.
The frame one of the frameworks that I teach, and I'll let you piggyback. But one of the frameworks that I teach is called the genesis of superfan building, right? And if you break that down, that means the beginning of building superfans. But there's a process to it,
Yeah.
and I've been teaching this for like I don't know since 2018, 19, probably before that, probably when 2017 ish. And a lot of them when I take artists through that process, like they've never done it because like, I can go to the studio, I can make record, I should be in the music industry. It's not that
Yeah.
easy. Not that easy.
Absolutely.
Anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I love that you brought this up too, because so many artists are fixated on trying to go viral and they think, once I have a viral moment, I made it. But that's not the case at all. I've seen plenty of artists that had like t multiple viral moments in 2020, once TikTok really popped off, and then they fell off the face of the planet and they maybe had one hit record, that went to radio and that was it. And they're chasing that high and now they're only, averaging a few thousand views on TikTok and now they
Mhm.
feel like they have like an empty fan base, So I
Yeah.
mean, I kind of have my own framework, but I preach community all the time. And like
Right.
my framework is content, community, connection. So obviously you need the content to be discovered, right? Because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's kind of like the mandatory thing you need
Hmm.
to be discovered.
Hmm.
the content and going viral isn't enough. You like you said, one at a time. You got to actually be building that community,
Yeah.
whether it's a Discord group, a private Facebook group. I mean, there's so many people in the business too that are building awesome platforms. Like the Grouped is a new like community
Hmm.
platform for artists, and just making sure that you're actually figuring out who your fans are, because you can have millions of followers on TikTok or tons on Instagram. Most of them might not even care to support you, so that's why
Right.
it's so important to kind of funnel these fans and figure out who like your number one fans are.
Yeah.
And then lastly, like connection, it's not enough just to push these people onto a Discord or a private Facebook group. You want to actually make sure that you're building that connection, staying consistent, connecting with them, hopping on private live streams with them, etc. But when you really like implement those three C's, you'll find as an artist, like you're actually really starting to build a dedicated fan base.
I love it. No, it's so true because I mean, a lot of artists too, when they make, I know you talked about Coachella before we started recording, and a lot of people they want to get on those stage, but if you can't don't forget about the Coachella main stage. If you can't do the side stage where nobody's watching you and give me the
Yep.
same type of show and energy, what makes you think you should be on the biggest stage? And so many
Yeah.
artists make that mistake. Like, if you can't give me the same energy in a room of 25 to 50 people, by
Yep.
the way, those are sold out shows. Nobody, you can tell people, hey, I do sold out. Nobody asked you how big the venue was.
Yeah.
But you could do a whole show, a whole tour in a 50-person cap room and say, hey, it's sold out. Nobody cares how big the venue was. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times, if you can't give that type of show and that type of a space, what makes you think you are just you can just graduate or elevate to the highest level and you put in no work yet?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always preach like streams don't necessarily translate to ticket sales. So
Right,
like,
right, right, right.
you might have millions of streams, but you can't, sell out
You can't.
a
They can't.
small,
They can.
small,
They can't push
small.
hard tickets. They can't. People can't push
Exactly.
hard tickets, man. I mean, and that's a big deal. That's the only reason why. That's the only reason why a promoter will pay you, is because
Yeah.
you can put because where do they make money? At the door, in the bar, or in the kitchen?
Yeah.
That's where they make their
And
money. Yeah.
and then on the other hand, I see artists that only have hundreds of thousands of monthly listeners, but they're selling out like venues at 1,000 cap more
Right.
than the guy that's having like a million monthly listeners. So,
Right. Right.
that all comes down to just nurturing your fan base and building community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um. So let's go. So we're looking at your bio. So you do some work with Def Jam?
I did, yeah. I was a director of digital marketing at Def Jam, but
Okay, so
yeah,
talk to me about that because I've never been inside of the corporate structure because I've always kind of been on the outside. So take me into kind of what does that look like a little bit?
yeah. So I mean, I've worked for both the non-corporate and corporate music business now, and I'm so grateful for it because I feel like it really gave me a perspective on like the full landscape and how the overall music business works. But for me, I mean, it was always just kind of an itch of mine, to get in the corporate music business world. But I learned so much of it, and what I've learned is that, I'm not gonna say like
No,
anything bad about
don't say nothing bad. You know, I know you got some
nothing.
relationships. You know.
Oh, of course, nothing bad about the major label business world. All I'm saying is that artists can definitely get the same results, sometimes even more, by just, working hard and staying independent.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, the corporate business, it's corporate. There's so many different people working on your project, and
Right,
artists will have so many different departments hands-on.
right.
And I think there's definitely a time and place to sign to a major label. And if you're an artist of a bigger size, you're gonna need all these hands on deck. You're
For
gonna
sure.
need the,
For
you
sure.
know,
Right. If your goal is to be a global mega pop star, you're gonna need that core. You're just gonna need it because because you need the type of people where when you're asleep, somebody else is working on your record, right? So you're gonna need that. But if your goal is to just be able to get that core of 1,000 fans,
yeah,
right? You definitely do not need a major label to do that. You can definitely do that on your own. And look, so I won't say it's rigged, but part of the game is a little rigged, and and everybody can't get to the top of the mountain. It's not designed that way. It's only designed for a few people to get to the top of the mountain. It just is. I mean,
Yeah.
if somebody told me a stat a few years ago and it stuck with me, they said there's 9 million artists across the world that consider professional. 9 million. Nine
Yeah.
million people. Less than 10,000 of that 9 million are signed to a label or subsidiary of any kind of label, whether it be independent or major. So the odds are slim to none, damn near, that you ever will be signed to a label, whether indie or major. So I think, and people think when they get signed to a label that it means their job is easier. It's actually harder now.
Yeah.
I would say so.
It's
What's your thought process on that?
Yeah, I mean, the two things that major labels have are the connections and the funding, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
like
yeah,
I
yeah.
said, if you're trying to become, a pop star or bigger, an artist touring worldwide, you're going to need that. So, for example, there comes a point where you need to get on the late night TV shows, the Jimmy Kimmels of the world, right?
Hmm.
And the
Hmm.
label can press play on all of that. That's
Hmm.
something you can't do as an independent artist, right?
Right, 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 right.
So if you're an artist, at that level, it makes perfect sense. But for a newer artist that's, barely breaking thousands of streams or even a million sometimes, like they're not going to open up those gates for you until you've proven that you're at that level and you deserve, to be introed. And so I feel like for a lot of younger artists, it's a dream of theirs, of course, to be signed to a major label, but they don't realize how much work goes into it once you're
Right.
in. Because the work doesn't stop. Like
Okay.
now you need to prove to the label why they should really believe in you, give you fatter marketing budgets. So I feel like, of course, like it's the big leagues. Everyone dreams of it. But for most independent artists, like I'll tell them, really just focus on the simple things, growing your fan base, your streams, your
Hmm.
followers, and you can really do all that on your own.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah,
need all the resources of a label. And at some point, when you get to that level, you'll feel it. But if you're
yeah.
not there yet, just stay independent or sign with an indie label.
That's a good point. I mean, I think independent because the truth of the matter is it's if you look at the history of the record business, major labels have never really broken artists. They've enhanced. There's always been somebody else that did the work, and they
Exactly.
passed it off to a bigger entity that then poured gasoline on whatever it is you were doing, right? It used to be
Yeah,
a production, you would sign to a production label. The production label would do the work, would develop you, and then they would get a deal or distribution deal through a major, and the major would then, take over and give you those big dollars. But it's never been them labels actually developing the artist. It's always been the smaller entity developing the artist in
exactly.
the history
Yeah.
of the record business.
Yep, you're 100% right. And just like, working with both indie and major label artists, I've gotten like this perspective that I've never had. And honestly, like a lot of these indie indie labels, like sometimes I would think for like a younger artist, going the indie route is so much worth it because they're so much more involved. They're all hands on deck, and like they're really involved in everything. Whereas like if you're a younger artist in a major label system, you're not going to be prioritized. Whereas if you're like in an indie label system, you're probably going to be prioritized. So I
Right.
always say go the indie route.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like minor league baseball, right? I'm a big baseball fan. Minor league baseball, you're riding on buses, going to small towns, small cities, that type of deal. Major league baseball, you're on the private, team plane. But those small cities you go to, that's where you get to really build those relationships that matter. Most
Yeah.
artists don't forget, like, you might live in LA or some of these bigger markets, but you work in the B, C, and D markets.
Yeah.
That's how you work. I mean, artists like John B, who's been around in the game since for 30 years, he doesn't work, he works in the small towns.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so many artists forget that, like, the small towns. I was just at a music festival here in Florida, in Fort Meade, Florida. You probably never heard of it, right? Fort Meade,
It
Florida.
sounds
It's right near Tampa. It's near Tampa and yeah, Tampa and Lakeland. It's right in between Tampa and Lakeland, right? But
gotcha.
it was called the Florida Music Soul Festival, and Chrisette Michele was a headliner in Fort Meade, Florida. And that place they had and that's a small little country town, but
Yeah.
people were showed up because guess what? They want to be entertained too. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So a lot of artists drop the ball because they sleep on the value that comes with those small towns, those small venues, because those are
Yep.
people that are going to be able to touch you, take pictures
Yep.
with you, really build that connection, and oftentimes get booked again. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
yeah,
And just to, because you mentioned such a good point, like, these majors aren't really breaking artists, like they're elevating artists that come in and have already are at a
yeah,
big level, So
right,
I think that's like a great point because honestly, like everyone thinks, you hear the conspiracies like, oh, he's an industry plant, right? But
right,
the
right,
thing
right,
is,
right.
there is no such thing as an industry plant today's day because the playing field is level.
Yeah,
You can give a label as much money as you want, but at the end of the day, they got to make the artist break on TikTok,
yeah,
Instagram Reels, whatever it is, and they're playing the same game that kid in their bedroom is playing. He's running Instagram ads, he's paying influencers to use his music,
yep,
he's playing for third-party Spotify playlists. It's all the same tactics and strategies that the major labels are doing. The only thing the major label might have is more funds, but at the
yeah.
end of the day, they're pressing the same buttons that you are. You may not have all the same connections, but yeah, I mean, any major label person working in the label will tell you how hard it is to break an artist in today's day. And
Yeah.
it's not like back then, where we just pushed the artists through radio and it was a
It,
hit.
it was a hit. Right, 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 right.
And
Yeah, yeah,
we can't do that anymore. And kind of the
yeah.
audience the audience determines who they
Right.
want to listen to. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. You can't. You could. I say this often. Major record companies used to be able to one that could curate sound and they
Mhm.
could force feed music down your throat. Right. And they
Yep.
said this is going to be the single. Right. And it could still be.
Yeah.
And the way they would make that happen is they would just pay to force feed it down your throat. Now
Yep.
we don't know what the hit single is going to be. We know what feels good. You know what
Hmm.
sounds good, but you don't know if this is going to be the record that pops. Sometimes it doesn't pop that way. It doesn't mean it's a
Yeah.
bad song. It just means it doesn't, for whatever reason, doesn't pop. But like you said, the playing field is leveled, man. It's
Yeah.
leveled. This is why I was saying earlier. That's why you don't have to be in L.A. or Nashville or New York
Yeah.
or Miami or Atlanta to you can be in Memphis, Tennessee. You can be in Indiana. You can be anywhere you want to be. Or I always tell artists, don't move to these industry cities until you absolutely have to.
Yep.
If it makes sense, right? Like
Exactly.
I just because cost of living, one because it's
Yeah.
very very expensive. I say this too, and I'm sure you agree with this too. It's okay to still have a job and still do this. You know
Absolutely.
what I'm saying? I'm sure you advise your clients the same way. Like, no, like, don't quit your job.
Yeah, no, you gotta fund the career. And I have plenty of music friends, that are streaming hundreds of thousands, sometimes like even millions of streams, and they got a side job, but
Yeah,
they have a method to the madness. They're
right.
working this side job to fund their marketing campaigns, to spend, an average of 1,000 on TikTok ads a month, whatever. So they have like a full strategy built out, but
Mhm.
I think a lot of artists they think like, oh, once I pop, I can quit my side job, whatever. But it's a hustle. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
Working in music, being an artist, it
yeah,
is not easy. And sometimes it does mean juggling multiple jobs
yeah,
on top of doing the music.
yeah. It's interesting because I always said like, I think people want to hear real music again because I think over the last couple of years we kind of had that whole minute and 50-second kind of record, right? Because the
Yeah.
Gen Z, Gen Alpha, understands, well, the key number is what? I heard Rick Barker say this, 31 seconds. Because after
Yeah.
31 seconds, you get paid for the stream. So 3 minutes, and nobody wants to listen to a 3 minute, 3.5 minute record as who's Gen Z or Gen Alpha. They're just not going to do it, right?
Yeah.
So
Ex-
so it's better for them to have a record that starts directly with the hook, a minute and 50 seconds long. By the time they listen to the record twice over, they've been paid twice for the song. Now, what I will say is that there are people that want to hear real music again, real songs, real, crafted again. But that's also for people who understand that this is a craft. Because music, unfortunately, has become a hustle.
Yeah.
It has become a hustle. It's no longer in the era of where you got into this because you loved it. You were willing to deal with the grind of it.
Yeah.
People want to come in. They want to come into the music industry and they think it's like the drug game. They come in here, make a quick lick, and get out. And it's like it just doesn't work like that. It doesn't
Yeah.
work like that. You know?
And unfortunately, good music is only half of the puzzle. Like
Yeah, yeah,
50%, you need the good music, of course, but like marketing is just as important. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
always
yeah,
tell artists, the same amount of time you're investing in the studio to create good music, you got to be investing that time into learning as well. So,
yeah.
yeah, you don't need to become like a music marketing expert, but just making sure that you're educating yourself, finding guys like us that are sharing free game,
Hmm.
learning how to do marketing stuff yourself. If you have an entrepreneurial,
Yeah,
brain and you're down to learn, like
yeah.
go learn. All the info is out there. And I'm so grateful that there's people out there literally sharing free music marketing strategies. But there's no reason why an artist today, shouldn't have any sort of marketing strategy because there's so much free game on there and there's so many different like marketing strategies that artists can be implementing.
Completely, completely. And to be honest with you, like I steal a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like, I steal a lot of stuff because look, my thing is, if you put it on the internet, it's free game. That's for everybody. That's for me. That's for you. That's for whatever. If you if you don't want people to take it, don't put it on the internet for free.
yeah. It's not stealing. It's just, learning,
Learn
taking someone else's tip and then
and put.
applying it.
That's true. I would
Because
put my
they stole that from someone else.
exactly right. We got right because at the end of the day, Josh, you know what it is. There isn't what I was going to say, right? So the information is out there. When people
Yep.
hire us as consultants, what do? They hire us because of our experiences and the relationships that we have. If it's just about the information, it's all out there.
Yeah.
It's not nobody's holding it hostage. It's
Yeah.
there. But you
Yeah.
bring somebody on your team because they have the experiences, they have relationships that they can call and get somebody to do something. That's where the value is, right? That's why you pay somebody. That's why you have somebody on your team because of that reason. If you just want to take the time to go learn it all yourself, it's all there.
Yeah, exactly. You just need the will and drive to want to do that, because I know so many artists that they just want to make music, be in the studio, and that's it. And they want their music to find its way. But you can be making music as good as The Weeknd. And
Uh-huh.
if you're releasing it and you're not doing anything to market it, it's just gonna literally be sitting out in the air.
Yeah.
Nobody will discover it. So you gotta at least be doing something to push,
Yeah.
music.
And
And
yeah.
it doesn't even require a budget. If you find a way to throw up some content that gets views, that can be your free marketing strategy,
Yeah.
but yeah,
At the very least in the beginning.
that's
At some point you're gonna have to throw some you're gonna have to throw some fire on the gasoline. You know what I'm saying?
of course.
Because
Yep.
unfortunately, like what I try to tell people is this too. This is a pay to play game. This is a pay everybody pays to play. Like they hate what I people hate what I, but it's just true.
Yeah.
Nobody does you think the record companies are doing this get stuff for free? They pay for it.
Yep. 100%.
They pay for it. It's not like people pay you pay for this stuff. It's
Yeah.
not none of this stuff is free.
Yep.
None of it is free. They pay for it. So
Exactly.
because I remember one time I was talking to an artist and I said, well, I can put you on this magazine platform, but it's going to cost you some money. It might not
Hmm.
cost me money because of the relationships that I built, but it's going to cost you money because
Yeah.
that platform needs to operate. But everybody who
Yeah.
feel like they don't need to pay for press or pay for these type of things, like, what are you talking about? What do you think people? That's what they do. They pay for it. What do you
Exactly.
think a publicist does? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy when I see artists who don't feel like they don't want to or need to pay for stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and we follow some of these outlets, like R&B music on Instagram, Sleeping on Gems, all these music outlets like Instagram blogs and stuff.
Uh-huh.
You think like these pages are fully organic, but every post behind it is paid. So I mean, good marketers though will make things look as organic as possible. So I always tell artists, when you do decide to start paying, whether it's for press, running ads, getting these Instagram blogs to feature your page. Don't spend your money until you figure out like a very organic game plan because like that's what really brings results. And
Okay.
I see artists, jump into this stuff too early sometimes and it just looks completely inorganic and then it's just money down the drain.
What do you see as kind of some of the most common mistakes they make?
Yeah, so I feel I'm always advocating for the organic to paid strategy. And what I mean by that is make sure you're learning how to create content in a way that feels authentic, content that you're proud of. Test it across TikTok, Reels, YouTube Shorts, whatever.
Hmm.
Spend a couple months doing that, just posting organically to see what people really connect with.
Hmm.
And then once you figure out, okay, people are liking this style of content, it's this certain performance video that I shoot outside that people are really messing with, now I'm going to start paying to push out that specific piece of content.
Right.
And what I find a lot of artists do is they jump into the paid stuff way too soon. And they might push, a video that no one cares to see on these platforms, and they just get slammed in the comments.
Right. Right.
And last thing you want is like a really negative press PR campaign. So I always
Yeah.
tell artists, really take the time to figure out what works organically first. And then when you feel like, okay, I actually am getting engagement, positive engagement on this, then you can jump into the paid.
I love that. No, that's so true. That is so true. I think because again, people try to you can't fast track this stuff. You need a foundation. You need something to have a way have a blueprint. This is why something I talk about, right? The brand positioning statement. So for me, it's this. It's the community that you want to serve, who you are. Why should somebody
Yep.
care? Why should somebody care? You know what I'm saying? And that brand positioning statement is your competitive advantage, is your north compass, as they say, right? It
Yeah.
is the thing that you know is going to set you apart. But so many artists don't even think about something like a brand position statement. They have no idea what it
Yeah,
is. You know what I'm saying?
for sure. And I always tell artists like figure out what your brand proposition is first. Like once you figure out what who you are and how you want to be identified, then everything will start to fall into place. And like I know it's a really confusing for artists to understand like what is my narrative or what's the story I want to tell. They don't, for whatever reason, artists really struggle to figure that part out. But the way I have helped them is I give them an exercise and I say, okay, think about 3 to 5 of your favorite artists.
Okay.
They all probably can be defined in one sentence, and their fan base will all describe them in the same exact way.
Okay.
Right. So, J. Cole, he's a lyricist, very strong, and he's kind of just respected for his music, whereas someone with like a Lady Gaga, her brand is like her visual identity, how she looks, and nobody really knows anything like too much about her personal life. So I tell artists like once you come up with that one liner and your fan base all starts to describe you in that same way, then you're onto something. But I tell artists like figure out what your one liner is going to be, and you're not going to always have it figured out from day one. It's kind of something that you build it out over time. But I think it's something that you should always be aiming to achieve is like figuring out what that one liner is going to be for you.
For sure. No, yeah. So I mean, yeah, the brand positioning statement is so important. And then what I like to talk about after that is the buyer fan persona. Some people call this fan avatar,
Yep.
character analysis. Like I said, look, it's all the same shit.
Yeah.
We just package it up. All of us teach the same stuff. We just package it up and we call it something different. That's why I
Yeah.
say that's why I said there's enough room for all of us. You and I do a lot of the same stuff, but like, why would I not support you? Because
Yeah.
there's enough room for all of us. We can't help everybody. I physically can't help it. You can't help everybody. Why can't we? We should be supporting each other. That's why I love having people who think like me on the podcast because we're out here fighting a good fight,
Yeah.
and that's what I love.
I love that you mentioned too, like, as an artist, you're an avatar. You almost got to separate your personal identity and your artist identity and think of yourself as a character, So I
Mm,
mentioned Lady Gaga earlier.
mm-hmm,
When you think about her as an artist, she's almost like a character.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So when you think about your artist project, like you need to start thinking of yourself as a character and how you want to display yourself on social media.
mm-hmm.
So I think once you kind of start to figure out like your avatar and then you also figure out like your target audience, who you want to attract, that's really when things start to get moving for you. But it's so important to figure all that out, the identity stuff, because I find artists that get lost in that and they can never figure it out. But
For sure.
yeah.
No, it's true because I mean, everybody when they talk about the fan base, they always talk about demographics, but they miss
Mhm.
out on the better word, which is psychographics.
Yeah.
That's the term. That's what we really want to focus on because the demographics only tell us so much, right? So when we're talking about psychographics, it's the study of consumer behavior. Why do people do what they do? Because once you know that information in your about your audience, that puts you in even a better position to be able to know how to talk to them properly, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like, once you figure out who your demographic is, marketing gets way easier.
Yeah,
So when people say like, oh, we think our phones are listening to us because we get all these ads based off stuff I was just searching. But all it is, it's like these ad platforms and everything are optimized so well to get to learn your behavior and stuff.
yeah,
So when it comes to marketing yourself, you can go learn how to set up Instagram and TikTok ads, and you can target the very exact person that you want to be in front of, from interest to age to gender. You can target within a press of a button. But your ads aren't going to perform well until you figure out, who that audience is.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I always tell artists, like, as an exercise, literally write down on a piece of paper what your ideal avatar looks like.
hmm
Yeah.
I literally have a module because I have my framework broken down into modules, and it's module two. The first module is I call it the artist profile,
Okay.
and then the second module is the buyer fan persona, basically the fan avatar. And that's what we do. We break it down. It's exercise. Because before we can get to the fun shit, you know what I'm saying? Like you got to do this stuff. It's very classroom. It's very. Are you willing to learn? It is. It's not sexy. It ain't
Yeah.
sexy. It ain't sexy. But
Yeah.
it's designed for people who actually want to build a long term fan base. Look,
That's,
some people are here just for a hot second.
yeah.
Just are. You know what I'm saying? They're here for a hot second. And those are not, I try not to really help those people because I can't really do much for you. Like, I only want to
Yeah.
help people who are willing to do the work. Who are willing,
Exactly.
like, people, what always gets me? It's like people don't think this is a real career or a real job or real anything. They think, oh, you just go get a real, they don't, you know how much work this is? Like I said, if you want to do something else, like, if you just want to make money in life, go do something else.
Yeah.
Don't get
Abs
into the creative space, you know?
Absolutely. And like anyone in music will tell you, like, we're in it for the love of it because
Exactly.
working in music, it ain't easy.
Let me tell you something. I'm sure you go through all this. I've heard every excuse in the book. Just because they sign my agreement doesn't mean they're going to pay me on time. I deal with it all, and sometimes you can't even. Hold on. Let me see. Yeah. So if you just want to do, if you just want to make money, and don't get me wrong, you gotta make money to survive in life. Forget that, right? But you can't come into the arts because you just think you're going to get rich. The only way to really get rich in music is through publishing.
Yeah.
If you understand music publishing, you can make a nice living doing that, right? But that's also a very complicated space, and if you're
Yeah.
not in it every single day, it can get very wow. it can get very, very complicated if
Yeah.
you don't understand the basics of music publishing and how all that works, you know?
Sure. And I mean, since we're on the topic of, making music and money from an artist perspective, it's
Okay.
very difficult, and like most artists are going to wait for the money to come through three different things: streaming, touring, or merch, right? But the thing
Yeah.
is, you're not really making a whole lot of money off of streaming until you're getting a
Yeah.
ton of streams. Millions of streams is really
Mm-hmm.
when these checks actually start to look decent.
Mm-hmm.
And then touring, you're not touring until you have a sizable audience. So there's so much time in between
Mm-hmm.
where you get to that level and can actually make money. But I see artists that are actually making money, with just very little monthly listeners. But the thing is, because they're building actual community. So you look at people like La Russell,
Yeah.
La Russell doesn't have crazy streams, but the thing is, he's making a boatload of money because he learned how to position himself and just offer like so much value to his fans by like these experiences. For example, he
Yeah.
does like these concerts at his house and he has like
Right.
a pay what you want model.
Right.
So I always encourage artists, think outside the box. How are you going to make money outside of just those three main revenue sources?
Right.
There's so many different ways you can make money now online. So I see artists doing, live streams and people are actually paying to like be a part of that. Or I've seen artists do like live digital concerts and you have to pay like $10, to watch a digital concert. And the cool thing about that is you can do that in the comfort of your home or in a local, venue.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like touring, that requires a lot of work, you're actually touring and whatnot. So you can't wait until you're big to start making the money. You got to start thinking, about different ways to make money. But like I said, we're in this like digital revolution. There's so many things you can do to make that digital money. You just got to work for it and actually learn,
Yeah.
what strategies to be implementing.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's interesting because I work with a lot of older artists too who are like in Gen X, and I think sometimes we forget about we're so used to the Gen Z model that we forget
Yeah.
that the Gen X model still works if you understand how to mix a little bit of old school with a little bit of new school. For instance, one of the artists I'm working with, we're going to be working with the DJs heavily because see,
Okay.
for some reason in Gen Z we forget about the DJs. We forget about the people that break records. And
Yep.
we're not going to do that. We're going to let the DJs know that that we believe in the DJ model still, and we're going to be using a lot of the old school approaches mixed with a little new school, but because these people who are in their 50s, right? First of all, age doesn't matter anymore. First
Yep.
of all, the age thing was always just a whole corporate. That was a corporate thing because they didn't want you to be put up to game, right? They didn't want you
Yeah.
to. So they're like, okay, if they're too old, we can't sign them. I'm like, what does age have to do with anything? I mean, hell, Tony Bennett was performing to the age of 90, right, till he died. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So what? So, but in hip hop, it was first of all, hip hop is the youngest genre. So
Yeah.
we're just now having guys into their 70s, 60s, and 70s. Russell Simmons ain't even 70 yet. You know
Yeah.
what I'm
I,
saying? Go ahead.
I actually have a point too, just about like age not mattering. And because I've worked with artists, who are like 50s, 60s, and that's kind of always their argument. Like, am I too old for this shit? But the thing is, I tell them, like, I actually think as an older artist, you have kind of an advantage because 90% of artists uploading content on TikTok, Instagram, whatever, they're all 20 to 30 on average,
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's like the norm. But if I'm scrolling through TikTok and I see an artist that's 50 pumping out some dope ass content, I'm like, hell yeah, so much respect. Like
Yeah.
he's still believing in the dream. He's
Yeah.
pumping out really great quality content and music. I'm gonna follow and I want to support.
Right.
So when you think about things that way, you actually kind of stand out and there's less competition within your age. And
Yeah.
because of that, you can break
Yeah.
through the noise easier.
That is so true. That is so true. And I tell older acts too. I said, look, make the music that's true to you, right?
Yeah.
Don't try to do what the young kids are doing. That's not your generation. That's not your era, right?
Yeah.
So, for instance, one of the hip hop artists I work with, Jimmy Mack, he does boom bap. He does boom bap, right? Real boom bap, nostalgic,
Yeah.
golden era hip hop. Right. I said when I first started working with him, he was trying to do that. I was like, don't worry about trying to do trap. It's not what you do. You
Yeah.
do boom bap. You're from New York. He was raised in Cali, but he has that New York feel. I said, let's do those type of records that work for you in your age demo. And I think that,
Yeah.
so I always try to tell artists, you're not too old and stick to the shit that works for you because the only goal of any artist should be find your fucking audience that works for you.
Yep.
That's it. You know what
Exactly.
I'm saying? Because everything else is too overwhelming. When you're trying to, I gotta be this to this point. No, you don't. It's too like
Yeah.
just find the people that fuck with you.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And
So
like I truly believe I can market any artist of any size, of any age. Like it as long as you got good music, it's
yeah,
possible, you know. So for any older artist that's listening to this,
yeah,
like find young marketers like myself and we'll help you find your audience. Like there's so
yeah,
many nostalgic older R&B like new like R&B classics type
and
of
that's
pages
and
on
the other way,
Instagram.
and that's coming back. By the way, that people still want to
Yeah.
hear that '90s feel. That's coming back. It really is coming back. Go ahead. I'm not to cut you off.
All good, but yeah, you said it. And I mean, a lot of these pages, like these nostalgic or 90s, 80s pages, have massive audiences, you know, and all we got to do is seed your content onto those pages because a lot of older folks follow those pages. So there really is an audience everywhere. You just got to find it. And like you said, the nostalgic stuff is in, and not just with music, to be honest, like with movies.
Yeah,
I just watched a re-premiere of Star Wars last week for the 20th anniversary, and it seemed like entertainment across the board is kind of just bringing old shit back right now, which I think is dope.
that's dope. That's real dope. No, that's real cool. You mentioned seeding. Talk to me about what that means a little bit? For those who might not understand.
Yeah, so what seeding is pretty much we take an artist's content and we seed it onto pages that would make sense. So for example, with an older, let's say an older R&B act, he has dope content and music. We would take that content and I would reach out to all these outlets, pages on Instagram, ask them to share that piece of content, and we would, frame it so that it looks organic to their page. And that's what seeding is. We're seeding their content onto their pages, or it doesn't even need to be like music related pages. We can seed things like on meme pages. So for
Okay.
example, let's say you have like I'm working with this artist right now and she's a younger hip hop artist, but she created a song called Hot Pickles and it's
Okay.
like it's a pretty memeable song. It's she made a song about like the viral hot pickle on TikTok. So
Okay.
what we're doing is we're going to take her song and seed it out onto like a bunch of meme pages with like viral hot pickle videos.
Okay.
So there's different seeding strategies you can use, but all it is pretty much making sure your music is behind strong content and pushing it out on Instagram pages that have large followings or TikTok pages too.
I love that. I love that. So I mean, and that's what I mean about mixing a little bit of the old school with the new school, especially for the older
Yep.
older like just kind of be hybrid, kind of have a little hybrid strategy, right? We don't
Yeah.
have to make it all digital. We can mix it with digital and some analog, but
Yeah.
still making sure that it all can still kind of cohesively work because it's never going to be one thing that takes you over the top. It's going to be a series of things moving at the
That's
same time that's going to
yep.
allow you to get traction, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
cool.
At the end of the day, it's just throwing mud at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah,
But
and yeah,
you yeah, you got to throw the mud at the wall to see
yeah,
what sticks.
you definitely do. Because look, nobody nobody ethically knows. Like we know what we know. Nobody can tell you, well, if we do it exactly this way, this is what's going to happen. Nobody knows. We
Yeah.
don't know. We don't. Nobody can ethically tell you, right? Well, if you do it this way, it'll happen this way every single time.
Yeah.
I don't know that. You don't know that. But what we have is fundamental principles that we use. Ultimately, we feel like we're working pretty much most situations, not all, nothing's absolute, but if we do things a certain way, we're pretty confident that you know they can go a certain way, right? Well,
Yeah.
at least the way we hope it'll go. Look, man, we could be here for hours. I want to respect your time. This has been so fun. I'm so glad that we got the chance to connect. But before we get out of here, how can people find you if they want to work with you, connect with you? How can they find you?
Yeah, thank you, Darrell. So you can find me on socials. My music marketing Instagram page is gotsauce.xyz. So I actually just went through a little rebrand, but if you've you probably came across my TikTok page. It was at Sauce with Joss, but just changed my socials. But yeah, you can find me at Got Sauce, and I share a bunch of music marketing game on there for free. And if you want to get in contact, just DM me, honestly. And then I also have my email in my bio, so I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
Awesome, awesome, guys. Look, this has been another great episode of the Encourage Inspire podcast, episode 100. Until next time, I'm out of here. Peace.
Yeah.